I couldn't bear the prospect of being burdened with a woman whose belly resembled a monstrous creature, who would force me to raise the child on my own, while enduring the sight of her swollen, 9 months pregnant belly. His eyes radiated contempt, and a sly smile spread across his lips, anticipating this inevitable day. Despite my foreknowledge of such an event, I immediately retired to my room. I returned with a document in my hand. I bluntly presented the prepared divorce papers to Anton. Anton contorted his face in disbelief and exclaimed, "What the hell? What's this all about? It was your idea. Now sign them quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow." I challenged him. His face quickly turned red, as my provocative words stung him. "Watch closely. I will make you regret the way you've treated me, and look down on me all this time." I explained that my name is Helen. I'm a 26-year-old housewife. Until 2 years ago, I worked for a mobile phone company. I met Anton, Kate, my boss, at work when I was 24. It didn't take long for us to fall in love and get married. Anton, 3 years older than me, was very reliable, especially when it came to teaching me the ropes of the job. As a newcomer to the department who didn't know her way around, I couldn't express how grateful I was for Anton's precise instructions. As he taught me the ropes, we became friends. We became friends and often went out to dinner together. When he asked me out on a date, I was over the moon, especially since I had never dated anyone before. It's embarrassing and not something I share often, but as a cartoon lover, I have always been more interested in 2D characters than real men. However, watching my high school and college classmates getting married one after another, I started to feel the pressure. When I fell in love with Anton, I secretly vowed that he would be my first and last love. So when I started dating Anton and we got married a year later, I was completely ecstatic. Anton was handsome and popular with our female colleagues, workers. I was proud to be his wife and many people congratulated us. I say congratulations, or whether I'm jealous. "I wish you happiness," I said, basking in unprecedented joy. I couldn't have imagined what was in store for us. "You're married to me now, so you're going to quit your job, right?" I told her yesterday, the day after we registered our marriage. As we eagerly embarked on our new married life, Anton dropped a bomb. "Apparently I've always wanted my wife to concentrate solely on household matters. Don't worry, I can support both of us with my income," he said. "But this is so sudden. You never mentioned it before." I replied that Anton had never mentioned the idea of me quitting my job before we got married. I had to take my current job on my father's recommendation, and it wouldn't be right to leave without notice. I tried to explain, but Anton's eyes were quietly pressuring me, warning me not to pursue the subject. Instinctively, I closed my mouth, unable to resist any longer. "I should have told you, but it's done. From tomorrow you don't need to go to work. I'll take care of the transfer," Anton explained. The news about was so abrupt that it made me feel dizzy. But Anton's words were firm. Since he had been my boss at work, I couldn't argue with him, even if I had to leave my job without a proper goodbye. I was determined to make our marriage work. Anton had entrusted me with the household, and I wanted to live up to his expectations. With the utmost dedication, I worked hard at the housework, preparing meals. I concentrated on Anton's favorites, even if they were prepared without any specific comments on taste. I longed for a word of appreciation, especially after quitting my job and not being recognized by anyone. "Is my jacket clean? I have an important meeting to go to tomorrow," I asked Anton one day. "Yes, of course," he replied, showing a domineering side with some old-fashioned views. I remembered how lucky I was to have married him. I took the initiative to live up to his expectations. With no income of my own, to live normally meant relying on Anton, while our relationship often felt more like that of employer and housemaid than that of husband and wife. Our marital life was generally smooth. One day, however, I felt ill and couldn't get out of bed. I felt lethargic. I thought I would catch up with the housework the next day. Anton entered the bedroom and asked angrily, "What are you doing? Get up and get something to eat," as he kicked at the blanket I was under. "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well," I replied. "Well, can you take care of yourself today?" I explained, hoping for understanding, instead of nodding or comforting me. Anton frowned and said, "You're not working yet. You're just lying down because you feel a bit sick." I got up from the bed in disbelief. It was unthinkable that he would ask from his sick wife. I never imagined he would be like this. Before we were married, perhaps it was my fault for not seeing it, but it was too much. I found myself doing, with tears streaming down my face. Several days passed, and my health showed no signs of improvement. It was then that I realized I had missed my period. I panicked. I rushed to the chemist to buy a pregnancy test. When I took it, the result was positive. Tears of joy flowed naturally. I decided to tell Anton the news. When he returned from work, it immediately lifted my spirits. The day Anton came home after midnight was the day I had chosen to tell him the news. But the moment he walked in, the smell of alcohol made me sick. His face was flushed and he staggered as he walked. It was amazing how much he had drunk, especially without telling me. Although I had prepared dinner, I wanted to tell Anton the news of my pregnancy. But more than that, I wanted to do it quickly. My excited emotions were surging, and I shared the news with my drunken husband. "Yes, I haven't been to the doctor yet, so it is not confirmed." I began eagerly to share our happiness. But Anton's face darkened as he replied, "Child, what have you done?" His characteristic I'd never heard before. I don't want a child. Damn, that is the worst. If you're going to have it, raise it yourself." His harsh words shocked me. He rudely took off his and went to the bathroom. It was unbelievable. I couldn't understand why he would make such irresponsible comments about our baby, instead of being happy for us. The happiness I had felt just moments before was immediately replaced by deep sadness. Why would he say such things? He had never mentioned not wanting children before. We hadn't even used contraception, so I naturally assumed that we both wanted children. As he hung Anton's jacket and was about to take his shirt to the laundry, I noticed something else. What was it? A piece of paper had come out of the pocket of the shirt. At once, I could tell it was a receipt by its texture. At first I thought it was just a receipt from last night's meeting, and I was about to throw it away. But then my eyes caught the name of the establishment. "Is this a motel?" My hand trembled as I held the receipt, and I could see from the name that it was. It was indeed a motel. The shock of this discovery weighed heavily on my heart. Why does a man love me? Isn't marriage supposed to be between two people who love each other? Especially since we've only been married a little over a year. How can this be? For years I have been lost in imaginary romances, never really committed to a real relationship. I couldn't immediately accept this harsh reality, but the idea of Anton cheating began to make sense, and many pieces fell into place. Had Anton been using me from the beginning of our marriage? Was he really in love with the person who he was with while I was just a convenient servant? All these doubts swirled around me. Was that the reason? He reacted so harshly when he found out I was pregnant. As I struggled with these thoughts, nausea set in, and I became convinced that something was wrong. Yes, there is. There's no doubt about it now. Perhaps the reason he kicked me out of the company was because his mistress worked there. It all seemed to make sense, as if he had married me for stability rather than love. The line between reality and my imagination. Still, there was no denying the heartless words he had thrown at me after of my pregnancy. That day, I decided to gather evidence of Anton's infidelity. From then on, his cold behavior towards me was undeniable. It was as if he couldn't forgive me for getting pregnant. Despite I was suffering from morning sickness, he would deliberately eating smelly food around me and nitpicking my housework. He forced me to do chores. My pregnant body had to endure a lot, and my heart was heavy. Nevertheless, I continued to investigate his affair. Anton never left his mobile phone. He even took it with him to the toilet. This made it impossible for me to sneak a peek. When I sneaked into Anton's room, it was neat and tidy, nothing incriminating in sight. He was meticulous in his work, and his desk was always in perfect order. I realized that it would be a challenge to catch him off guard. I often checked Anton's pockets for possible evidence such as receipts. However, my investigation was proving difficult. The thought of hiring a detective crossed my mind, but I didn't have the money for such an undertaking. I was deep in thought. I was thinking about my situation when I received an unexpected telephone call. It was my father, who rarely spoke to me. "Hello, it's me, your father. How are you?" he asked. I was surprised by his call, given his busy schedule. I asked Dad, "What's wrong? Aren't you busy at work?" "My employees are doing well, so I'm not too busy," he explained. My father, the CEO of a company in Canada, had always been a workaholic. I didn't have many childhood memories of playing with him, but I respected his dedication to his work. His unexpected phone call made me curious about its purpose. "So what's going on?" I asked, waiting for his answer. My father went on to reveal a shocking truth. "Is this really true?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes, he's not the type to lie. I want you to believe me," my father reassured me. At first I was in shock and unable to respond. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, I felt a sense of relief. "Thank you, Gad. I'll do my best." I thanked him before hanging up. My research had finally paid off, and I couldn't help but feel elated. However, the newfound knowledge, feelings of anger and frustration, because of the ongoing tension between Anton and myself, Anton remained distant. Even though I was pregnant, every time he acted this way, I harbored a deep hatred for him. Months went by and our relationship remained strained. Finally, an event occurred that shattered our lives. 9 months pregnant, I was always cautious around Anton. I lived in a state of constant fear. I tried to avoid crossing paths with him. I led a quiet and repressed life. One day, I ate dinner as usual. When I came home, we sat at the dining table. As I was eating quietly, suddenly Anne slammed her fork down. "What is this? It's tasteless," he shouted. He threw the food I had prepared on the floor. I was stunned by his outburst. I tried to understand the situation. The anger at having the food I had was beginning to bubble up inside me. "I've been thinking about this for a while, but lately you've been complaining about the taste of the food I prepare." Anton criticized my cooking, saying it was tasteless. Although it was true that since I became pregnant in order to make healthier meals for everyone. This was only a temporary measure, until the baby was born. If he found the food bland, he could have added salt himself. Why did he have to throw the food on the floor? I was about to voice my complaint when Anton sneered and uttered hurtful words. "I don't want a wife with a monster belly. You will have to raise the child on your own," he said spitefully. His eyes filled with malice and a vulgar smile spread across his lips. I had always expected this day to come, even though I had hoped for a different outcome. I quickly went to my room, took out a document, and returned to hand it to Anton. "Well, here are the divorce papers," I said, thrusting the prepared documents in front of him. Anton's face fell in shock as he stammered, "What the hell? What's this?" All of a sudden, "Well, it was your idea. Now sign it quickly, I'll file it tomorrow," I replied. In fact, I had been thinking about divorce for some time. I had begun to suspect Anton of infidelity, but with a child on the way, I was unsure if I could support myself if I took that step. But now I had another plan in mind. My determination seemed to have provoked Anton. His face flushed with anger. "Just watch. I will make you regret every moment you look down on me and controlling me," Do you think you can survive without me? You have a baby to take care of, and you will regret it. I remained determined, unshaken. I'll be fine, don't worry about me, I assure you. Perhaps irritated by my determination, he the divorce papers and began to fill in the blanks. Here you go. That's what you wanted, it's yours. He said thank you and I replied, I guess and didn't think I would actually file the divorce papers when he handed them over without a fuss. The next day, promptly, papers and left the house. I knew he would be surprised when he returned from work to find. When he returned from work, I then moved in with my parents, mainly due to my father's return to the U.S. from Canada and his suggestion that I stay with them. It was the right thing to do at the time. I was fed up with my life with Anton. I was very grateful to my father. I received 3 phone calls from Anton on the day I left home, but I ignored them all. Eventually he stopped calling. It became clear that I meant very little to Anton. He was probably content with his mistress by now, and I suspected he might even marry again soon. I had decided to move on from Anton. 6 months had passed. I had a baby who was born safely, and I was living happily with my parents and the baby. It was while I was enjoying this peaceful life with my family, Anton called again. At first I ignored his calls, but after several persistent attempts, I had no choice but to answer. Hello? What do you want now? I said, tired of his tone. Hey, what's going on? Why were you on that show? And since when? Since when are you the daughter of a CEO with millions of dollars? Anton's voice cracked with surprise and anger. It turned out that Anton had been watching a television program that had been broadcast. After I had returned to my family home, I had received a request from a television station after I had returned to my family home, thanks to my father's role as CEO of a prestigious global technology company. The show featured the lavish lifestyle of the CEO's family. The producers had come to our house and filmed the lifestyle of my father's family. During the interview on the TV show, they were discussing our family's wealth and mentioned a rough estimate of $10 million. I never thought Anton would see the show, but the power of television is really something. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you that I'm worth $33 million due to an early inheritance. That's why I was able to divorce you. I said yes. My father told me about the inheritance, which gave me the confidence to live comfortably even after divorcing Anton. When he heard this, Anton's reaction was immediate and he was furious. What? Why didn't you tell me about this before? Half of it is mine, right? Give me the money now. I replied calmly. Just as I suspected after the show, all you could think of was to extort money from me. Gifts from parents are not included in the division of property. And are you forgetting your own misdeeds? Anton was puzzled and asked, What are you talking about? I continued, I'm annoyed by your anger, Anton. You called me yourself. You should know. You can't blame me for what you've done. You cheated. Haven't you with your new wife? And she's a junior at your company, isn't she? You started seeing her before we were married. Anton was shocked by the information I got from my father. I finally had the upper hand. Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father told me. He has many friends in your company, and one of them told me about your affair. I've never mentioned it, but I'm going to ask for child support. I explained, and Anton, still in denial, protested. Stop joking. Why should I pay maintenance? It's all because of you, isn't it? You got pregnant all by yourself and slacked off with the housework. It's all your fault. Listening to Anton blame me, without apologizing for his own mistakes, was unbelievable. I couldn't believe that. Ever been married to someone so lacking in common sense? I really felt that leaving him was the right thing to do. Anton, I'm broke. My wife has spent all the money I earned, and now I'm drowning in debt. Anton's pitiful plea fell on deaf ears. I went from anger to sheer disbelief. I never wanted to deal with such an unreasonable person again. Ever again. With this thought in my mind, I tightened my grip on the phone. What are you talking about? Do you realize how ridiculous you sound? I never want to deal with you again. I'll let my lawyer deal with the child support. Never call me again. And you will never see the child again. Goodbye. After pouring out my emotions, I quickly hung up the phone. Afterwards, I blocked Anton's number and took a deep breath. It's over now, right? I won't get any more calls from Anton. I don't want him to disturb my peaceful life anymore. I thought just then. I heard my baby crying from the other room and I rushed to comfort the baby. It turned out that he had started paying child support. Every month, according to a former colleague, Anton claimed that the woman he had remarried was quite a spendthrift, and that he had to pay his living expenses with debts. It seemed that because of these circumstances, Anton had tried to get a share of my inheritance by calling me. However, Anton, who hadn't received a penny from me, now had expenses that exceeded his income. He was struggling, either because he felt things were going, or because he couldn't stand being looked down on by his colleagues. What's more, he foolishly started looking for a new job after he had left his current company. As a result, he was condemned to a life of poverty. Hearing this from a colleague didn't move me in the least. I thought he deserved all the hardship. The harsh words and cold demeanor he showed me will never fade from my memory. I sincerely hope he gets what he deserves. On the other hand, I'm enjoying parenthood with my parents. I think I'm going to lead a comfortable life, without financial worries. But since my father talked about handing over the company to me, I'm ready to work. After all, I am my father's hardworking daughter.